Hello friends, Paper Historian here. I'm glad to welcome you to my channel, where we don't just tell stories, we follow them into the rubble and smoke of history and sit with the people who had to survive in it. Tonight's story is not about victory, but about what happens when the banners fall, when the medals turn into evidence, and when uniforms become targets. In today's video, you'll walk in the boots of a German officer after 1945, stripped of certainty, hiding behind false names, watching comrades vanish into suicide, captivity, or exile, and listening to a country whisper its own fractured fate in the ruins. So settle in, let the day grow quiet, and let's step into a world where survival itself was just another performance. You do not notice the end of the war because someone told you it was over. You notice it because suddenly the maps mean nothing, the orders contradict themselves, and the trains that were supposed to bring ammunition bring refugees instead, women and children clinging to bundles of rags as if rags can stop tanks. You were an officer, at least that was the title on your papers, with a uniform cut to make you look taller than you are, and medals polished to a shine no one really cared about. But now the uniform is a liability. The medals are a target, and the only map that matters is the one that shows you which roads are still open before the Soviets roll over them like a tide that does not pause to count bodies. The spring air in 1945 smells not of flowers, but of smoke, of villages already half cinders, of gasoline drained from abandoned vehicles, of corpses left where they fell because no one has the time or the stomach to bury them anymore. You hear artillery like a permanent thunder in the distance, sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but always there, reminding you that the Reich you swore oaths to is now nothing more than slogans echoing through ruins. You see comrades trying to hold formations that dissolve as soon as they are formed, soldiers dropping rifles and picking up shovels to dig graves for themselves in advance. The officer's mess has no food left, only stale bread and the bitter taste of defeat that clings no matter how much schnapps you pour on top of it. You begin to realize that survival is no longer about discipline or honor, it is about improvisation, about deciding which insignia to rip off your collar, which papers to burn, which stories to rehearse in case strangers with guns ask why you are here and not in a prisoner's cage. You watch men who yesterday barked orders now whispering excuses, inventing new names, pretending to limp like farmers, practicing accents from regions they never set foot in. You tell yourself, you are not like them, you have dignity, but your hands are already tugging at the stitching of your shoulder boards because dignity is not bulletproof. The collapse is not noble, it is not one last heroic stand. It is men crowding roads with carts stolen from peasants. It is generals vanishing into forests with forged documents. It is trucks overloaded with wounded breaking down and being stripped for parts by their own passengers. It is villages suddenly flying white sheets from windows while still pretending yesterday they were loyal. You see comrades shoot themselves in barns. You see others march straight into American lines with hands raised, praying for chocolate and cigarettes instead of justice. You hear rumors of those who disappear east and are never heard from again, swallowed by camps whose names are already whispered with dread. You tell yourself you will not be swallowed, you will not be a name crossed out in a ledger or a skeleton rotting in Siberia. You tell yourself you have options, though the truth is you have none. Only choices between bad and worse. Do you head west, hoping the Americans will take you for just another weary German, a man with no particular history? Do you head south, dreaming of slipping into Austria or Italy, where maybe a monastery wall can hide you? Do you stay put, bury your uniform, and try to pretend you were never here? Every road is lined with other men asking the same questions, and every answer smells like desperation. The civilians look at you differently now. Once they saluted, now they stare, eyes narrowed, lips tight. Some spit. Some ask where their sons are, and you cannot answer because their sons are gone, eaten by a machine that chewed through everyone and left nothing but ash. Mothers ask if their boys died bravely, and you nod, though you know bravery means nothing to artillery shells. children scavenge cigarette butts from the mud and laugh when officers stumble by with boots falling apart, because in the collapse of nations, even children sense when masks are off. You sit in an abandoned farmhouse one night, the candles burning low, the air thick with smoke and mildew. Around you, a few other officers, not comrades, just survivors, argue in whispers about what comes next. One insists on trying to reach the Alps. Another mutters about Brazil as if passports will sprout from the soil. Another simply stares at his pistol. You say nothing, because every plan sounds absurd, every future impossible. But you also know that silence is a plan of its own. If you speak less, you are remembered less, and in times like these, being forgotten is the closest thing to safety. You dream of trains, of slipping aboard among refugees, of covering your face with a scarf and letting the chaos swallow you. You rehearse names, Heinrich, Josef, whatever seems bland enough. You practice saying you were conscripted late, that you never saw combat, that you were just a clerk. You try to believe it yourself. But you also know that papers can be forged, accents faked, but the eyes remember. If someone who served with you looks too closely, if someone in the wrong uniform recognizes your face, your story ends before it begins. So you move, always move. Roads clogged with carts, with cows, with people carrying their entire lives in bundles, forests whispering with deserters, villages pretending neutrality until whichever army arrives. The Reich has ended, but it has ended everywhere at once, leaving you no ground to stand on that does not sink beneath your feet. You once thought of yourself as part of history, a man who would be remembered. Now, you only hope to be a man who is not noticed. The spring of 1945 is not about glory. It is about smoke, hunger, fear, improvisation. It is about uniforms turned inside out, medals buried in ditches, names rehearsed in whispers. It is about realizing that the empire you marched for has collapsed, and all you have left is the sound of boots in mud and the faint hope that no one will ask too many questions when you pass by. You begin the escape not with running, but with tearing, with the small, humiliating motions of pulling thread from your own collar, ripping insignia from your shoulders, burying medals in the mud like diseased animals that will infect you if anyone sees them. The uniform that once carried weight now carries only risk, and every stitch becomes evidence. So you strip yourself of rank until you are just another man in grey-green cloth that smells of sweat, smoke, and failure. You practice in your head the phrases you will use if anyone asks. I was conscripted late. I only carried messages. I never saw combat. Lies rehearse themselves faster than prayers now, because prayers will not save you if the wrong soldier searches your pockets. The roads are rivers, not of water, but of people. Families with carts creaking under mattresses and pots, soldiers limping on bandaged legs, officers with their caps pulled low, hoping no one notices how carefully they avoid eye contact. Refugees flow westward, always westward, away from the Red Army that everyone whispers about with the same mixture of dread and inevitability. The Soviets do not forgive, they do not distinguish, they simply take, and rumor says they take everything: food, watches, women, lives. You walk among this human flood, trying to look as anonymous as possible, one more figure blurred in the dust cloud rising above the road. But anonymity is not free. Papers are demanded at checkpoints, and you know your papers are poison. The name on them is yours, but it is also a rope waiting to tighten. So you trade, beg, steal. Somewhere on the road, a boy no older than 16 trades you his papers in exchange for your boots, too large for him, but worth more than names in this chaos. You are Heinrich now, a farmer's son, displaced, carrying nothing but a bundle of clothes. You repeat it until it sounds natural, until even you start to believe you once knew how to till a field. The officers who once surrounded you vanish quickly. One shot himself in a barn, leaving his boots neatly beside his body as if tidiness would earn him forgiveness. Another headed north, muttering about Denmark, though you doubt he will get far. A third simply walked into the crowd of refugees and dissolved. No farewell, no plan, as if his existence had always been meant to disappear at the first sign of defeat. You wonder if they will be remembered, and then you realize remembrance is a curse now. To be remembered is to be hunted. You see strange theatre on the roads. A general rides by in a cart, wearing civilian clothes, but still trying to bark orders at peasants who ignore him. A group of soldiers stop to shave their heads, hoping to look like monks, though their hands tremble too much to finish. A priest hurries past, dragging a suitcase so heavy, you know it is not scripture inside, but silver. Every man and woman wears a mask, but the masks are thin, painted in haste, cracking at the edges. The collapse has made everyone an actor, and you are one of them, though you once sneered at such performances. At night, you sleep in barns, crowded with strangers who do not ask questions out loud, but ask them with their eyes. Are you soldier, officer, criminal, deserter? You cough, you mutter something about your farm, you roll over, you pretend sleep. The less you say, the more you survive. You hear whispers of others caught, dragged away by Soviets, lined up by Americans, executed by locals whose villages were burned. You dream of footsteps at the door, of torches, of the word officer spat like a curse. You wake sweating, your hand reaching for a pistol you no longer carry. Food is scarce, and hunger teaches humility. You steal bread from a windowsill, share watery soup with a family that does not ask your name. Once you trade your belt for a handful of potatoes. Once you eat raw turnips stolen from a field. Each bite tastes of shame, but shame is easier to swallow than starvation. You avoid towns when you can. Too many eyes, too many questions. But sometimes you must pass through, and then you lower your head, shuffle your feet, try to look as weary as everyone else. In one town, you see an old poster still hanging, your leader's face staring out with promises of victory. Children throw stones at it now. You look away quickly, because once you saluted that face, and now you cannot admit it even to yourself. The Americans are closer, their jeeps rolling through roads with cigarettes dangling from mouths, their uniforms clean, their laughter too loud for a country in ruins. You think perhaps they are better masters than the Soviets, but then you hear stories of camps filling quickly, of interrogations, of names cross-checked against lists. You wonder if Heinrich the farmer can pass their questions, if your accent will betray you, if your hands, too soft for ploughing, will tell a story your mouth cannot. You consider fleeing farther, to the Alps, to Italy, even across oceans. Men whisper of ships leaving for South America, of monasteries hiding fugitives, of documents forged so well they make you a ghost. You cling to these rumors not because you believe them, but because belief is the only fuel left. Days blur into weeks. Roads blur into forests, barns into cellars, meals into hunger. You keep moving, always moving, because to stop is to be noticed, and to be noticed is to be caught. You learn that survival is not courage, not cleverness, but invisibility. The less you exist, the longer you live. And so your escape is not the triumph of a strategist, not the cunning of a spy, but the small, pathetic improvisations of a man who once carried rank and now carries only fear. You are not running toward freedom, you are running away from memory. You do not vanish into freedom when you shed your uniform. You vanish into a costume that never quite fits. The collar is gone, the insignia buried, the medals discarded, but the posture remains, the clipped tone, the habit of giving orders even when no one listens. And you learn quickly that survival depends on breaking yourself down into something smaller, quieter, less memorable. You are Heinrich now, a farmer's son who never marched farther than the nearest field, a man whose only battles were with weeds and weather. You repeat the story until the lie sounds like memory, until the voice in your head that once rehearsed regulations now rehearses the names of imaginary cows. But masks are fragile things, and you discover this every time someone looks too long at your hands. They are too clean, too soft, the nails too even, the calluses too shallow. Real farmers wear their life on their palms, and you wear yours on the way you avoid questions. So you fake it. You dig when you can, lifting soil until blisters form, working in barns for scraps of food, rubbing dirt into your skin so it looks permanent. You tell yourself you are blending in, though in truth you are only teaching yourself to believe you are not a man people should notice. The displaced persons camps are filled with men like you, though each one insists he is different. Former officers pretending to be tailors, engineers pretending to be carpenters, men who once shouted orders now speaking in whispers, each convinced his story is the one that will slip through the cracks. Papers are everything, and you clutch yours like they are bones of saints, forged lines in fading ink that say you are harmless, anonymous, replaceable. You trade names like currency, swap birth dates like recipes, and every time someone in a new uniform looks at you, you hold your breath until the stamp comes down and you are allowed to breathe again. The work you take is not dignified, but dignity is dead. You carry wood, mend fences, sweep barns. Once, you spend weeks pretending to be a labourer on a farm where the family looks at you with suspicion but accepts your silence in exchange for sweat. They ask nothing. You answer nothing. It is the best arrangement you could hope for. But at night, when you lie on straw, you dream of boots, of insignia, of salutes. You wake in sweat, your hand raised as if giving an order, and you curse yourself because even in sleep the mask slips. Every encounter is a test. The old woman at the market asks where your family is from. You mutter a town you have never seen. She nods, but her eyes narrow, and you know she suspects. A man asks if you served. You laugh bitterly, say you are unfit, point to a limp you exaggerate for effect. He shrugs, believes you, but your chest aches with the lie. Children watch you too closely, sensing the adults around you stiffen when you speak. Dogs bark when you pass, as if they too smell the falsehood clinging to you. The worst moments are when soldiers stop you, Americans with cigarettes and grins too wide, asking questions in broken German, sometimes just for sport. They laugh at your accent, slap your back, offer chocolate, but their eyes search your face, measuring, testing. The Soviets are harsher. No laughter, no gifts, only suspicion. Their questions rapid, their fists ready. You avoid them like fire. You tell yourself you will never cross their path, but the roads are crowded, the borders shifting, and you never know whose boots you will hear next. You keep your head down, but heads are heavy things. Once, in a tavern, you drink too much and the mask slips. A story tumbles out, about a march, about a camp, about a man you ordered shot. The table falls silent. Someone laughs nervously. You excuse yourself, stumble into the night, heart pounding. The next day, you leave the village before dawn, convinced eyes are following you. Perhaps they were, perhaps not. Paranoia becomes your only companion, sharper than hunger, louder than memory. The men you once called comrades are ghosts now, though sometimes rumours drift through the refugee lines. One escaped to Argentina, they say, under a priest's protection. Another is rotting in Siberia. Another reinvented himself as a shopkeeper in Bavaria. Another was recognised and strung up by villagers who lost everything. You wonder which fate is yours, and the wondering gnaws at you more than hunger. You learn new habits. Never sit with your back exposed. Never drink too much. Never speak first. Never volunteer information. The less you exist, the safer you are. You avoid mirrors because the face looking back is not Heinrich the farmer. It is the officer you buried, the man who once thought history would remember him for glory instead of survival. But the truth is, you do not live, you perform. Every step, every word, every gesture is theatre. You smile when asked, you nod when questioned, you pretend to know the weight of a plough, the taste of a harvest, the grief of losing crops. You become an actor so thoroughly that you sometimes forget where the role ends. Yet every night, when you close your eyes, The mask slips, and you are back in uniform, hearing the thunder of artillery, the screams of men, the slogans shouted in a language now cursed. You wake with a gasp, and in the silence you understand. Masks may fool others, but never yourself. You learn quickly that survival after a lost war is not only about what you do, but about what happens to the men who once stood beside you. The war ends, uniforms vanish, medals are buried, but the faces remain, drifting through rumor and fear, each one a reminder of what could happen to you tomorrow. You do not carry comradeship anymore, you carry comparisons, measuring your own path against theirs, wondering who will be remembered, who will be forgotten, and who will be erased violently in a barn or in a camp. The first stories are simple, whispered in barns and along roads clogged with refugees. One officer, a man you drank with in occupied France, put his pistol in his mouth the night Berlin fell. He left no note, just a body in straw and boots placed neatly beside him, as if tidiness could erase guilt. Another vanished into the chaos of surrender, walking into American lines with hands raised, hoping to trade obedience for chocolate and a blanket. Rumor says he was sent to a camp, questioned, then disappeared into the endless bureaucracy of captivity. Perhaps he lives. Perhaps he's starved. Perhaps no one cares enough to check. Then there are the ones who were caught by the Soviets. Their names travel like curses among fugitives, sent east, interrogated, dragged into trains packed so tightly men could not sit, shipped to camps where winter itself was executioner. You hear of one who had commanded hundreds, now breaking rocks with his bare hands in a Siberian quarry, his voice gone from shouting orders to coughing blood. Another supposedly died on the journey, frozen against the wall of a cattle car while guards smoked cigarettes outside. Each story stiffens your spine with fear. Papers can be forged, accents can be faked, but if the Soviets catch you, no mask will save you. Some are luckier, or so you tell yourself. They've vanished not into camps, but across oceans. Argentina, Brazil, Chile, names repeated like prayers. You hear of priests handing out false passports, of networks smuggling men south, of officers who once carved their names into Europe now running bakeries in Buenos Aires, farming in the Pampas, living under names so bland they might as well be weather reports. Some laugh when they tell these stories, whispering that escape is possible, that freedom waits where the sun is hotter. Others sneer, insisting those tales are fantasies, hope dangled to keep desperate men moving. You do not know which to believe. But you repeat the rumors anyway, because hope, even false, is better than silence. Then there are the men who try to live in Germany itself, to bury the past in the rubble of their homeland. One becomes a carpenter in Bavaria, his hands calloused with honest work, his eyes always lowered when strangers enter. Another sells fruit at a market in Cologne, whispering to his wife never to mention the uniform he once wore. They live quietly, blending into the ruins, hoping no one asks why their German is too sharp, their posture too rigid. Some succeed, others are recognized. A villager points, a survivor remembers, and suddenly the quiet life ends with a rope or a knock at midnight. You hear of one comrade dragged into a courtroom, his face pale beneath the lights, his voice trembling as prosecutors list atrocities he insists he never ordered. He says he was just following commands. He says he never knew. He says everything except the truth, which is that the system swallowed him and he swallowed others in turn. The trial ends with a verdict carved in history, and his name becomes a curse taught to schoolchildren. You wonder if your name could be next, if somewhere a file with your handwriting waits to be opened, and always the suicides. They pile up like stones marking a road, in forests, in cellars, in prison cells. Men who once stood tall now dangling from beams, faces purple, tongues swollen. Some shoot themselves, some swallow poison, some walk calmly into rivers. Each one removes himself from history, leaving others to guess whether it was guilt, fear, or exhaustion. Perhaps all three. You think about it more often than you admit, because survival feels less like victory and more like postponement. Their fates shape yours. Every rumor is a warning, every disappearance a mirror. If one comrade can reinvent himself as a farmer, perhaps you can. If one can be exposed in a market square, perhaps you will too. If one can vanish across oceans, perhaps you should try. You carry them like ghosts, men alive and dead, their stories swirling around you until your own feels less like a path and more like a gamble. And sometimes you laugh bitterly because the Reich that promised eternity has left its servants scrambling like rats, each one inventing new names, new stories, new lives, while the ruins they built still smoulder. There is no camaraderie now, no honor, no loyalty. There are only comparisons. His fate, your fate, all of them blending into the same truth. The war did not end, it simply changed costume. You walk through streets that are no longer streets but canyons of rubble, broken walls standing like jagged teeth, tram lines twisted into sculptures no artist would dare sign, staircases leading to nothing. Germany in 1945 is not a country. It is a graveyard pretending to breathe. You tell yourself you are only one man, hiding, surviving, but everywhere you turn, the landscape itself screams that survival is collective or it is nothing. The Reich that promised 1,000 years delivered 12, and the bill arrives in bricks, hunger, and silence. Hunger is the first truth. Children with bellies swollen from malnutrition wander through ruins, searching for cigarette butts or crusts of bread. Women stand in lines that stretch for blocks, waiting for watery soup ladled out by soldiers in foreign uniforms who smile too wide or not at all. Men barter boots for potatoes, watches for flour, dignity for scraps. You learn quickly that the currency now is not marks but calories, not gold but fat. A loaf of bread is worth more than a medal, a tin of lard worth more than philosophy. You eat what you can, when you can, sometimes boiled nettles, sometimes horse meat, sometimes nothing. Every bite carries shame, but shame has lost its meaning. It is just another taste in a city where smoke and dust already coat every tongue. Occupationsmächte, the occupiers, shape everything. Americans roll through towns with jeeps, chewing gum, cigarettes, jazz on radios that sound obscene against the silence of ruins. Children chase them for candy, women glance at them with resentment and curiosity, men keep their eyes down. The British arrive with tea and paperwork, efficient, tired, impatient. The French scowl, take wine, demand retribution. And the Soviets march like iron itself, their boots heavy, their eyes suspicious, their hands taking what they want. You fear them most because you know what their anger is built on. You pray never to see their uniforms close. Everywhere are signs of division. Town squares now carry posters in English, Russian, French, words that twist German sentences into something unfamiliar. New authorities sit in offices, distributing ration cards, demanding cooperation, promising denazification. People whisper about lists of party members, lists of officers, lists of crimes. To be on a list is death, exile, imprisonment. You pray your name is not there, that Heinrich the farmer is enough to hide you. But whispers travel faster than you do, and sometimes a neighbor stares too long, sometimes a stranger mutters, "I know you," and you feel the mask slip even when it hasn't. The country itself speaks through the mouths of its people, and their voices are bitter. Women mutter in breadlines, "We followed orders, and look where it brought us." Old men sigh over beer. "We were great once, now we are beggars." Children play games in rubble, shouting Tommy, even Ami, as they throw rocks, war becoming play, because war is all they have known. And in every voice you hear the same refrain. This is not a homeland, this is punishment, yet there is also denial. Some still whisper that the Führer lives, that submarines carried leaders to South America, that one day Germany will rise again. They clutch these fantasies like charms, not because they believe them, but because belief is easier than facing the ruins in front of their eyes. Others curse the past, spitting on the memory of uniforms they once saluted, muttering that all of it was lies, that they never believed, that they were victims too. Truth drowns in excuses, and you find yourself drifting with them, repeating phrases like, "I was just a soldier," "I never knew," until they taste like bread, dry, tasteless, necessary. The ruins themselves whisper louder than people. Cathedrals stand roofless, stained glass shattered, altars blackened. Factories are hollow shells, machinery ripped out, shipped abroad as reparations. Schools are gone, books burned or buried under plaster. Trains do not run, bridges lie collapsed in rivers. You walk through this landscape pretending you are part of it. A farmer, a refugee, a man with no history, but the ruins know better. They know you wore a uniform, they know you shouted orders, they know your boots once pressed too hard into foreign soil. You try not to hear them, but rubble is louder than conscience. You hear Germany in songs too. American jazz leaks from jeeps, Soviet marches blare from loudspeakers, British choirs hum through radio static. German songs are sung quietly now, lullabies to children, hymns to empty churches, folk tunes hummed over pots of thin soup. Music itself is camouflage, a way to pretend that life continues even when it doesn't. You hum too sometimes, and the sound feels alien in your own mouth, as if joy is treason. Everywhere you go, people talk about the future, but their eyes look only at the ground. Will there be food? Will there be work? Will there be Germany at all? You do not know the answers. You only know that your own future depends on silence, on blending, on not being recognized. The country has become a mirror, fractured, each shard reflecting guilt, denial, bitterness, hunger. You look into it and see yourself multiplied. Officer, refugee, liar, survivor. And you realize that Germany's fate is your fate. Ruined, divided, humiliated, trying to mask the past with rubble, pretending the future will be different, though nothing yet proves it. You are the country, and the country is you, stripped of uniform, desperate for bread, whispering excuses into the smoke. You survive, but survival is not living. It is a kind of suspension, a limbo stretched across decades where every day you tell yourself the story you rehearsed in 1945 and hope the world believes it as much as you do. The uniform is long gone, the insignia rotted in mud, the pistol traded for bread, but the past clings in your bones. And every time you look in a mirror, you see two faces. Weiss Heinrich, the harmless farmer you invented, and the officer who once signed papers, gave orders, wore boots polished to a shine. The years pass and Germany changes faster than you can keep up. First rubble, then scaffolding, then cities rising again. New roofs on old walls, new streets layered over the bones of old ones. The Americans stay, then leave, then return in different uniforms. The Soviets never leave, dividing the country like a butcher cuts a carcass, each piece salted with ideology. You watch the map redraw itself, lines slicing through villages, families, memories. One day you hear the word Bundesrepublik, another day Deutsche Demokratische Republik. New names, new flags, new anthems, each one claiming to be the true Germany, each one asking you to believe, to pledge, to start again. You nod, but inside you think. You cannot build a new Germany on bones that still whisper. Your neighbors do not ask questions. They rebuild, they marry, they raise children who grow up without rubble in their playgrounds. They talk about the future, cars, factories, radios, televisions. They talk about Wirtschaftswunder, miracle of the economy, as if breadlines and hunger were just a bad dream. You listen, you nod, but inside you remember the taste of nettles boiled in water, the shame of bartering boots for potatoes. You do not tell your children those stories. You do not tell them about the uniform either. You say you were displaced, you say you worked fields, you say little. Silence is inheritance now. But silence does not erase memory. At night, you dream of trains, of men in grey-green uniforms marching, of artillery thunder. You wake sweating, hearing your own voice barking orders you swore you never gave. You tell yourself it is only a dream, but your heart knows better. Sometimes you see old comrades in the market, or think you do. Faces blurred by age, posture still too straight, eyes still too sharp. You do not approach, they do not either. Survival is distance. Trials happen, sometimes nearby, sometimes in cities you never visit. Newspapers carry names, photographs, lists of crimes. You read them carefully, eyes darting, searching for your own name, though you know it is not there. You tell yourself you were small, unimportant, one officer among thousands. You tell yourself you never ordered atrocities, you only followed. You repeat the phrases until they sound like prayer. I did not know, I was not there, I only obeyed. The words taste like ash, but ash is still better than fire. The younger generation asks questions. Your children, your grandchildren, sitting at school desks, hearing teachers speak of guilt, of responsibility, of crimes. They look at you differently, eyes narrowing, as if they can sense you are not telling everything. They ask, "Where were you?" You mutter something about farms, about chaos, about being just another German trying to survive. They nod, but their eyes remain sharp. They are not fooled. They live in a country where memory is curriculum, where guilt is taught, where silence itself condemns. And yet you survive. You grow old. Your hair whitens, your back bends, your lies calcify into routine. You sit on a bench in a rebuilt park, watching children chase footballs where once there were bomb craters. You drink beer in a tavern, nodding at conversations about wages, about politics, about reunification. You smile when walls fall, when maps redraw again, when crowds cheer unity. But inside, you know unity cannot erase the fracture in your own story. You wonder sometimes if anyone still remembers you. Not Heinrich the farmer, but the officer. You wonder if somewhere in an archive your name still exists, on a roster, on a report, on a list of men who were supposed to fight to the last breath but chose to vanish instead. You wonder if history will catch you, even in old age, drag you into light, demand answers you rehearsed but never believed. You wonder, but nothing comes. Time erases faces faster than justice does. And so your life becomes paradox. You are guilty, but not caught. You are free, but never honest. You live in peace, but dream of war. You are forgotten by history, but history gnaws at your sleep. Your country is rebuilt, prosperous, divided, reunited, proud again. But you walk through it as a ghost, carrying silence heavier than any uniform. Would you call it survival? Perhaps. Would you call it living? Number. To be a German officer after 1945 is to perform the longest disguise, to breathe behind a mask until it fuses with your skin, to smile at grandchildren while your dreams whisper orders you swore you never gave. You survive decades not because you are innocent, but because survival is sometimes louder than guilt, and silence, if worn long enough, sounds almost like truth. Settle in for our next story, where we explore the French Revolution through the eyes of Marie Antoinette. You do not choose to be born Maria Antonia, Josepha Johanna of Austria, 15th child of an empress, but you arrive anyway, pink and squalling in Vienna in 1755, already another pawn in a game you do not understand, already marked for use by treaties and dynasties. You are the spare daughter, the one with ribbons in her hair and French grammar drilled into her skull by tutors who sigh at how you prefer music and dancing to Latin and politics. They call you charming, but also careless, and no one tells you that carelessness is a death sentence when your life is currency. You learn quickly that your face is not yours, it is Austria's. And when you are barely a teenager, your mother, Empress Maria Theresa, decides that your face will buy peace with France. You are 15 when they tell you you will marry the Dauphin of France, Louis Auguste, a boy only a year older than you, awkward and timid, grandson of the infamous Louis XV. You do not swoon, you do not blush, you do not dream of romance novels, because you understand instinctively that marriage here is not love, it is strategy. France and Austria have fought too many wars, and now you will stitch them together with your body, with your children, with your silence. They cut your hair, they strip you of Austrian clothes, they parade you across the Rhine in a ceremony designed to erase who you were. On one bank you are Austrian, on the other you are French, and between the two you are nothing, only a girl whose accent still betrays her foreignness, whose smile must now convince an entire nation that centuries of blood can be forgiven by dimples. Versailles greets you not as a home, but as a gilded labyrinth. The corridors smell of wax and perfume. The halls echo with silk rustling, with whispers sharper than swords. Courtiers bow, but their eyes measure you, count your jewels, tally your mistakes. The Dauphin, your new husband, stammers when he speaks, avoids your gaze, prefers hunting, and locks to intimacy. Nights are awkward, mornings worse, and rumours already circulate through salons about whether your marriage has been consummated, whether Austria's little archduchess is too childish, whether she can produce heirs. You laugh too loudly, you gamble too much, you spend too freely, and the whispers grow. At 15, you are already learning that Versailles is not a palace, but a stage. Every gesture, a performance, every word, an audition, every glance, a review. You must smile while others sneer. You must bow while others calculate. They call you Dauphin now, but they also call you foreigner, Austrian, interloper. They expect you to charm, to soothe, to embody the alliance. But you are 15, and all you want is to dance, to ride, to taste pastries and hear music. And when you do, they watch. And when you laugh, they judge. And when you stumble, they sharpen their knives. At court, ritual smothers privacy. You are dressed each morning in a ballet of etiquette, women competing for the honour of holding your stockings, your chemise, your gown. You eat while dozens stare, scribes recording, courtiers gossiping. You walk through gardens that smell of roses and betrayal. You smile at operas while pamphlets already caricature you as frivolous, foreign, wasteful. You are too young to understand that France is a country rotting beneath the perfumes of Versailles, that harvests are failing, that bread is scarce, that taxes strangle peasants while nobles sip chocolate. You only know that your gowns are heavy, your jewels dazzling, and your boredom constant. Your letters home reveal your loneliness. You write to your mother, to your brothers, explaining that Louis is kind but distant, that life at Versailles is stifling, that courtiers whisper constantly about your womb. Your mother writes back with cold instruction: do your duty, win your husband's heart, produce heirs. You are not allowed despair, you are only allowed usefulness, so you perform. You attend balls, you bow at ceremonies, you smile at courtiers who mock you behind your back. You learn to speak French more smoothly, to hide your accent, to pretend you are not foreign. But they never let you forget. You are Austrian, they hiss, l'Autrichienne, a word that will twist in years to come into something sharper, something like guillotine. You do not know it yet, but your life will be measured not by your laughter, not by your kindness, not by your youth, but by the hunger of peasants who will never taste the sugar on your lips, by the anger of pamphleteers who sketch you as a harlot, by the fury of crowds who will one day march to Versailles with pikes. But for now, you are only 15, and Versailles is still gold, and the mask of queenship is still fresh enough that you believe you can bear it. You think you are walking into a marriage. You are walking into history's courtroom, and the jury is already sharpening its verdict. You wake each morning not to silence, but to ceremony, because Versailles does not let its queens or dauphins rise privately, not even for a moment. Dawn is a performance, your bedchamber a theatre, and the audience is a crowd of courtiers who have sharpened their elbows to push closer to you. You do not dress yourself. That would be vulgar. Instead, noble women compete for the honor of handing you stockings, of fastening your gown, of pinning your hair with ribbons. Each gesture is not kindness, but status, a currency traded in whispers later. Who touched the queen first? Who was allowed near her skin? Who was relegated to the outer circle? You are not a person getting dressed. You are a ritual being enacted, and Versailles feeds on ritual like a parasite. The rooms around you drip with gold, mirrors, chandeliers, marble. Outsiders gasp when they see the hall of mirrors, its endless reflection of candles and kings. But you learn quickly that mirrors in Versailles are not for beauty, they are for surveillance. Every gesture is doubled, tripled, seen from all angles. Every laugh echoes down corridors. You cannot cough without an echo chamber of interpretation. The palace is not home, it is a panopticon designed centuries before anyone used that word. Meals are not nourishment, but theatre. You sit at long tables, silver glittering, goblets full, dishes paraded in as if the arrival of soup were a military triumph. Nobles crowd the room, not to eat, but to watch you eat, to measure how delicately you lift a spoon, to note if your appetite is hearty or faint. Bread is abundant at your table, pastries delicate, creams and meats and sauces endless, while outside peasants fight for loaves. You do not see them yet, not clearly, but their absence is louder than your feast. They will remember your abundance long after your hunger comes. You seek escape, and you find it in small rebellions. You gamble, cards and dice clattering through nights that stretch until dawn. You spend money on dresses, towering hairstyles powdered and sculpted into ships, gardens, fantasies perched on your head. You laugh too loudly, you dance too freely, you demand a private retreat in the Petit Trianon, a small palace within the palace where you play shepherdess among curated gardens, silk dresses disguised as rustic muslin, cows brushed until they gleam like marble statues. You tell yourself it is innocence. Play, relief from the suffocation of court. But outside the walls, pamphlets sharpen their ink, portraying you not as innocent, but as frivolous, foreign, wasteful, a harlot disguised as queen. Versailles itself conspires against you. Courtiers whisper that you spend too much, that you meddle in politics, that you are too close to Austria. The king, now Louis XVI, is gentle, timid, obsessed with locks and hunting, incapable of silencing rumours. You are left exposed, your smile painted as arrogance, your laughter as mockery. Every gown becomes evidence, every hairstyle an accusation, every night at cards a scandal. The affair of the diamond necklace, a fraud you never touched, stains your name as if you wore the jewels yourself. People mutter that you would bankrupt France for trinkets, that you do not care if peasants starve. You say nothing, because Versailles never trained you for defense, only for display. And display becomes suffocation. You long for privacy, but queens do not have privacy. Your pregnancies are public. You give birth before a crowd of nobles who jostle to see heirs emerge from your body, as if you were a fountain spouting legitimacy. Your children are paraded, measured, painted, gossiped over. You cradle them, but the warmth of their skin is always shadowed by the cold breath of court politics. Every child is not just your son or daughter, but a statement of dynasty, of alliance, of Austria and France stitched together in flesh. Even your attempts at simplicity backfire. You wear muslin gowns, lighter, freer, easier to breathe in than stiff brocades. But pamphlets paint you as mocking peasants, wearing peasant clothes made of silk, sneering at poverty by pretending to play it. You build a hamlet at the Petit Trianon, cottages with thatched roofs, but the thatch is clean, the cottages perfumed, the sheep brushed. You walk among them, calling yourself shepherdess, while outside Paris, real shepherds curse your name. their flocks dying in fields without fodder. At night, you stare into mirrors, face powdered, lips red, eyes lined in kohl, and you wonder if you are still Maria Antoinette, the Austrian girl who once danced in Vienna. But Versailles has erased her, painted over her with layers of etiquette and rumour. You are Marie Antoinette now, Queen of France, and every gesture you make is ammunition for people sharpening their anger. You laugh, they hiss, you cry, they sneer, you breathe, they accuse. Would you survive it? Perhaps for a time. Perhaps you would enjoy the jewels, the feasts, the dancing. But eventually the weight of mirrors would crush you. The whispers would slice deeper than blades. The theatre would consume you. Because Versailles is not a palace. It is a guillotine disguised as gold, and its blade falls slowly, silently, long before steel touches skin. You think scandal is something whispered behind fans at Versailles, words traded like cards in smoky salons. But in France, by the late 1780s, scandal has turned into a weapon sharper than any blade, and you are the target painted on every pamphlet. It begins as whispers, then caricatures, then woodcuts smuggled out of presses, until the very air around you tastes of ink and venom. You are no longer Marie Antoinette, Queen of France. You are l'Autrichienne, the Austrian woman, the foreign parasite, the she-wolf in pearls, the reason bread costs too much and dignity costs even more. The affair of the diamond necklace is the spark, though you never touched the jewels. A necklace of obscene size and value, meant originally for Louis XV's mistress, sits unsold, too extravagant even for a decadent court. A cardinal, desperate to regain favour, is duped by a conwoman into believing he can deliver the necklace to you secretly, win your forgiveness, earn prestige. Letters are forged, meetings staged, masks worn, and the cardinal believes he is serving you. When the fraud unravels, the question is not whether you were involved, you were not, but whether the public believes you were. And they do. They believe with a hunger sharper than starvation. To them, of course, you would scheme to obtain diamonds while children gnaw bark for supper. Of course, you would indulge while France starves. The truth does not matter. What matters is that the story is too perfect, too delicious, too damning to let go. Pamphlets bloom like weeds. They depict you in bedrooms with lovers, with priests, with guards, with women, with anyone who can be used to stain your name. They call you Madame Deficit, mocking every livre spent on gowns and opera while the treasury groans under debt. They sketch you with fangs, with claws, with a belly swollen from imagined affairs, with eyes narrowed in cruelty. Pornography and politics blend, because for the mob there is no difference. You are female, foreign, and visible, and that is enough to make you guilty of everything. At court, you hear the whispers grow louder, carried in letters, in glances, in the smirks of nobles who are too cowardly to defend you but too eager to enjoy your decline. Your husband Louis shrugs, insists you ignore it, retreats into his locks and his hunts. You are left to face it alone, with only your children, your few loyal friends, and the mirrors of Versailles reflecting a face the people now despise. Outside Versailles, hunger turns into rage. Bread prices rise, harvests fail, rumours spread that wagons of grain are diverted for your tables, that your hamlet at the Petit Trianon is fed while Paris starves. Women curse your name in markets, men spit when they speak of you in taverns. When riots erupt, your face is painted on effigies, paraded through streets, burned. The words, "Let them eat cake," are placed in your mouth. Words you never said, words too absurd even for you. But they stick, because the story is irresistible. You become a symbol not of one woman, but of everything wrong with France. And symbols are easier to hate than people. Every attempt you make to soften your image backfires. Muslin dresses meant to seem simple are mocked as peasant costumes for a queen. Charity is dismissed as performance. Appearances at the opera are hissed at. You withdraw more, retreat into gardens, into family, into silence. But silence too is interpreted as arrogance. There is no move you can make that is not turned into evidence against you. And the salons of Paris, the pamphleteers, the journalists, they feast on you. Every night they invent new sins, new scandals, new lovers, new insults. They smear your accent, your origins, your habits. They call you harlot, witch, monster. The word queen disappears from their lips, replaced by Austrian, woman, enemy. You feel the tide turning long before the gates are stormed. You feel it in the way servants glance too long, in the way guards shift uneasily, in the way the music of Versailles sounds hollow, like instruments playing for an audience that has already left. You feel it when you ride in carriages and crowds mutter curses instead of cheers. You feel it when petitions arrive from Paris, not begging, but demanding. You feel it when even your children hear whispers from servants and ask questions you cannot answer. You once thought being queen meant spectacle, but now you understand. Being queen means target. You are the screen onto which an entire nation projects its rage, its hunger, its disappointment. You are guilty because you exist, because you are visible, because your gowns gleam while fields starve. And you realize the irony. The palace you once thought a golden cage was not cage enough. The people are already rattling its bars, sharpening pikes, whispering that the Austrian woman must go. You still smile at mirrors, still hold your head high, still speak with grace, because dignity is the only weapon left to you. But you know already, Versailles has taught the people how to hate you better than it ever taught you how to be queen. You wake one morning to a sound you do not recognize, not the rustle of silk skirts in your chambers, not the murmur of courtiers rehearsing flattery, not even the distant echo of hunting horns your husband adores, but something heavier, rougher, carried by wind. Voices, thousands of them, chanting, shouting, singing, not in harmony, but in hunger. You ask what it is, and no one answers quickly. Servants avert their eyes. Guards shuffle their boots. Then the words arrive like knives. Paris is marching. Women, they say, women by the thousands, armed with pikes, knives, broom handles, muskets stolen from arsenals. They are walking through rain, through mud, through hunger, dragging cannons, demanding bread, demanding answers, demanding you. You once thought crowds were distant, rumours, pamphlets, shadows muttering in taverns. But now they are at your gates, their faces smeared with rain and mud, their voices carrying the weight of centuries of famine and fury. They are not impressed by gold ceilings or painted gardens. They do not bow when they see Versailles. They spit, they curse, they shout for bread, they shout for you. Inside the palace, the rituals continue, absurdly, stubbornly. Courtiers still bow, servants still fuss over gowns, the etiquette machine grinding on as if bows and curtsies can muffle the thunder outside. But you feel it. Everyone feels it. The ground itself shaking under the weight of thousands of feet, the air trembling with the sound of rage. Versailles, that gilded cage, suddenly feels paper thin, and you understand in your bones that no amount of gold can silence hunger when it learns to march. They burst in. Guards try, fail, blood stains the marble. You hear screams, muskets, doors slamming. You run, not in silk, but in panic, clutching your children, moving through corridors suddenly stripped of dignity. You had once been dressed each morning by a ballet of courtiers. Now you are shoved into side halls by guards whispering, "This way, madame, hurry." You hear shouts, not titles, not your majesty, but insults. Austrian whore, Madame Deficit, give us bread. The palace that once magnified your every smile now magnifies every curse hurled at your name. You are brought to a balcony. The crowd demands you show yourself. Your knees tremble, your stomach twists, but you step out anyway, because hiding is worse, because silence will be read as arrogance. Faces stretch before you like an ocean, eyes sharp, mouths open. Pikes bristle, muskets glint, banners wave. Mud-streaked women with knives stare at you as if one gesture could trigger them to surge forward. You bow your head, you stand tall, you say nothing. Silence for once speaks louder than words. Some in the crowd cheer, others hiss, but for a moment, just a moment, the wave pauses. Your husband joins you, your children are brought out, the crowd roars. Bread is promised, grain wagons dispatched, concessions signed. But you know it is only delay, not salvation. The march does not end at your balcony. It ends with you leaving Versailles, escorted not by courtiers but by the mob itself, dragged to Paris like prisoners disguised as royalty. The carriages roll slowly, surrounded by thousands. People sing, jeer, wave pikes topped with bread loaves, others with severed heads of guards. You clutch your children, smile faintly, though inside you feel hollow. You tell yourself a dignity will protect you, but dignity is brittle when wheels roll over mud and pikes rattle inches from your face. Paris is not Versailles. The Palace of Tuileries feels less like a home and more like a cage. You are watched always, by guards, by mobs outside, by pamphlets still spewing venom. Your every move is reported, mocked, twisted. You walk gardens under armed escort, you eat meals under surveillance, you sleep with doors bolted not against assassins, but against your own people. Freedom, you realize, has shifted hands. It is the people who are free now. Free to march, free to shout, free to drag kings and queens into their courts. You, Queen of France, are prisoner already, though no verdict has been read. And you think back to Austria, to Vienna, to music, to childhood, and you wonder if Marie Antoinette ever truly became Marie Antoinette, or if the Austrian girl was always trapped inside a body being paraded for a country that never wanted her. You wonder if history itself ever wanted you, or if it only wanted your head. You live in Paris now, but you do not live. You endure. The Tuileries is a palace, yes, but one that feels like a prison with chandeliers. Guards watch every corridor. Crowds gather every day to shout curses at your windows. Pamphlets still crawl like rats through the streets, chewing your name into smaller and smaller pieces until nothing remains but the Austrian woman. You wake to the sound of chanting, you sleep to the sound of drums, and every breath tastes like captivity disguised as ceremony. Hope becomes a dangerous word, but you clutch it anyway. Advisors whisper of escape, of loyalists beyond Paris, of armies in the east ready to march if only you can slip past the eyes that never close. You imagine Vienna, your mother's city, where you were once Maria Antonia, child with ribbons in her hair, not a queen drowning in pamphlets. You imagine safety. You imagine silence. You imagine your children growing old somewhere other than a cage. The plan is made. A disguise, a carriage, a night journey. You will slip from the palace, vanish into darkness, ride east toward Montmédy, where loyal regiments wait. The king, awkward even in freedom, insists on travelling with you. The Dauphin, your children, attendants. The escape grows heavier with each name added, slower with each step planned. But desperation does not calculate well. You agree. You must agree. There is no life in Paris, only waiting for the next demand, the next insult, the next blade. The night comes. You leave in disguise, dressed not as queen but as governess, cloak pulled tight, bonnet shading your face. The king shuffles beside you, awkward even in anonymity, his bulk recognizable to anyone who looks too long. The children fidget, the attendants whisper nervously. The carriage creaks, wheels groaning under the weight of a family pretending to be ordinary. You tell yourself the plan will work, that darkness is cover, that speed is enough. But already the night feels heavy, as if history itself knows you are trying to cheat it. Hours pass, villages blur, horses pant, the road stretches. But the carriage is slow, too slow. Each stop for horses, delays, each curious stare lingers. Someone recognizes the king's face, someone whispers, someone rides ahead. The net tightens, though you cannot see it yet. You imagine freedom, but freedom is already slipping. At Varennes, it ends. The town is small, its streets narrow, its people suspicious. The postmaster, Drouet, recognizes the king's face from coins. The profile stamped on metal now betrays the man it once glorified. He alerts the town. The alarm spreads. The carriage is stopped, the family surrounded, the lie shredded in an instant. You plead, you explain, you insist you are traveling, that you are innocent. But innocence does not matter. Recognition is enough. The king is the king, the queen is the queen, and the people know it. You are taken, not with violence at first, but with certainty. The return to Paris is not a secret journey, but a parade of humiliation. Crowds gather along the road, staring, spitting, cursing. Guards escort you, not as protectors, but as wardens. The carriage creaks again, but now it is not escape, it is capture. You sit with your children, holding them close, your face pale but composed, because dignity is the last crown they cannot rip away. The people look in the windows, muttering, shouting, calling you traitor, harlot, Austrian whore. They no longer see royalty, they see prey. Back in Paris, the betrayal is complete. Once you were tolerated as queen, now you are branded as enemy. The escape proves what pamphlets always claimed, that you do not care for France, that you would abandon it, that you would flee to foreign arms. Trust, fragile already, shatters. You are watched more closely, guarded more harshly, mocked more viciously. The revolution accelerates, its appetite for blood whetted by your attempted flight. You know now that there is no leaving. You will stay in Paris until the end, and the end is sharpening itself in the streets. You think of Austria, of your mother, of Vienna's music. You think of freedom, but freedom is gone. You are Marie Antoinette, and you are no longer Queen of France. You are prisoner of the people, trapped in a story that will not allow escape, not in Varennes, not in Paris, not anywhere. You no longer live in a palace, you inhabit a cell. The Tuileries has collapsed into memory, Versailles into myth, and you find yourself in the Temple, the old medieval fortress in Paris. Damp stone walls dripping at night, straw scratching your skin, guards shifting outside your door like wolves pretending to be shepherds. You are not Marie Antoinette the Queen here. You are Widow Capet, a name spat at you with deliberate cruelty, stripping away Austria, stripping away France, leaving you nothing but the echo of a dynasty the people have chosen to murder. Your husband is gone already. He walked the steps of the scaffold months earlier, silent, heavy, dignified in his final moments, his head lifted, his voice carrying until the blade silenced him. You watched from afar, not with your eyes, but with your bones, because the walls carried the tremor of the crowd's roar into your chest. You knew what it meant then, though you whispered prayers against it. If they could kill a king, they could kill a queen. The trial is not trial, but theatre, and you are not defendant, but prop. The charges pile like stones, conspiring with Austria, draining the treasury, corrupting the king, betraying France. They accuse you of the diamond necklace affair again, though you never touched it. They accuse you of sexual depravity, of corrupting your own son, of crimes so grotesque that even your accusers cannot look you in the eye when they say them. You do not scream. You do not weep. You sit straight, your voice steady, and when the most obscene charge is read, you answer not with denial, but with cold dignity. Nature itself refuses to answer such a charge made to a mother. For a moment the court falls silent, and even your enemies squirm, because dignity can wound sharper than curses. But dignity does not acquit. The verdict was written before you entered. You are guilty not because of evidence, but because of existence. The revolution needs blood to prove itself pure, and your blood is more symbolic than any other. The Queen must die so that the Republic can live. The days in prison crawl. You sit in your cell, hair shorn, gowns reduced to rags, letters forbidden. You think of your children, the Dauphin, your son, already torn from you, locked in another cell, slowly starved, slowly broken, forced to sign lies against you. Your daughter, still alive, still clinging, but you know she will never again live as anything but survivor. You think of your past, the dances, the gardens, the laughter at Versailles. It all feels like scenes from another woman's life, painted on glass and then shattered. You are only this now, a widow, a prisoner, a condemned woman waiting for steel. And yet you hold your head high. Guards mock you, crowds jeer when you are escorted through corridors, pamphlets still invent new filth about your body, your habits, your supposed lovers. You do not break. You walk steadily, you speak softly. You remind them that a queen can lose everything but her bearing. It is all you have left, and you cling to it as tightly as you once clung to your children. The morning of your sentence, they cut your hair. The scissors scrape your scalp, locks falling onto stone like pieces of the past. They bind your hands, place you in a cart, not a carriage, because royalty must travel to death as common criminal. The streets of Paris are lined with people, tens of thousands, faces twisted with hunger, anger, triumph. They spit, they shout, they laugh. You sit straight, back unbent, your face pale but serene. You will not give them tears. At the scaffold, you climb the steps quickly, as if eager to deny them the pleasure of watching you hesitate. Your foot slips once, and you turn to the executioner, whispering, "Pardon me, monsieur. I did not do it on purpose." Even here, even now, politeness clings to you. The crowd hushes, then roars again. You stand, eyes forward, lips moving in silent prayer. The blade gleams above you, the crowd leans in, and for a moment you feel the absurdity of it all. That a girl born in Vienna, dressed in silk, married for politics, mocked for rumors, has ended here on a wooden block before a howling mob. You close your eyes, steel falls, history cheers. You are remembered not for your laughter in Versailles, not for your children's embraces, not for the music of Vienna you once loved, but for a single morning in October 1793, when the cartwheels creak over Paris cobblestones and the crowd surges to see you one last time. You sit straight, hands bound, hair hacked short, no jewels, no gowns, no mask, but dignity. They spit, they jeer, they scream your name twisted into insults, but you do not bow your head. You lift it higher, because you know this is not a ride to freedom, not a ride to exile, but a ride into history. The scaffold rises ahead, stark, wooden, ugly against the grey sky. It has eaten many already, and the crowd treats it as theatre, their hunger for bread dulled only by their hunger for spectacle. Vendors shout, selling wine and pastries, as if this were festival. Drums pound, drowning the silence of hesitation. You climb the steps quickly, because hesitation would be humiliation, and you refuse them that. Your foot slips once. You apologize to the executioner. Your last words polite, absurdly polite for a woman about to be decapitated. Even now, etiquette clings to you. The blade drops and the crowd roars. Some cheer, some gasp, some cross themselves, some laugh. Blood splashes, head held high for all to see. For a moment, you are not a woman, not a queen, not Austrian, not French, not even human. You are symbol, severed, displayed, consumed by thousands of eyes at once. Then the roar fades into chatter, into songs, into footsteps leaving the square. Paris exhales, the revolution feeds again, and you are gone. But you are not gone. Your name lingers, heavier than your body ever was. Pamphlets continue to spit bile long after your head falls silent. Writers twist you into villain, martyr, fool, tragic heroine. The mob remembers you as laughter while they starved. Nobles remember you as frivolous. Children remember you as the monster in bedtime warnings. History cannot decide if you were cruel or careless, but it decides you must always be guilty. And yet, in whispers, some remember differently. A guard recalls your calm, how you never wept in the temple. A servant remembers your kindness to your children. A witness swears your last look was not fear, but defiance. Even enemies admit you walked to death with spine unbent. They will not forgive you, but they will never forget you. The irony is sharp enough to draw blood. You were mocked as Austrian, foreign, a parasite, yet you die more French than many who screamed for your head, your body feeding the same soil that starved them. You were hated for extravagance, yet you leave the world stripped to rags. You were accused of heartlessness, yet you go to death, clutching only memories of children you could not protect. And centuries later, schoolbooks will still write your name, tourists will still crowd Versailles, films will still paint you as frivolous, tragic, beautiful, hated. You will live longer than the revolutionaries who spat your name, longer than the pamphlets, longer than the guillotine itself. Your life becomes cautionary tale, your death becomes theatre endlessly replayed. Would you survive it differently? Could anyone? Perhaps if you had spoken less, smiled less, gambled less. Perhaps if you had listened more. But history does not forgive hypotheticals. It only remembers symbols. And you, Marie Antoinette, are remembered not as Maria Antonia of Austria, not as wife or mother, but as the queen who danced on the edge of hunger until the blade reminded everyone that even crowns are made of flesh. The crowd leaves the square, muttering, laughing, wiping crumbs of bread from their lips. The drums go silent, the scaffold stands ready for the next head. Paris lives, you do not. But your shadow lingers in every whisper of revolution, in every mirror of Versailles, in every lesson taught about pride, extravagance, and the fragility of power. That is your epilogue. Not peace, not justice, not even truth. Just memory, bent and sharpened, carried forward by those who hated you, those who pitied you, those who never knew you at all. Your life was theatre, your death was finale, and history is the audience that never stops applauding. Settle in and get comfortable, because we're moving on to the next story, the life and fate of Nikola Tesla, as well as the myths surrounding him. You were born not in a gleaming laboratory, not in a storm of sparks, but in a small village called Smiljan in the Austrian Empire, 1856. Under skies that occasionally crack with lightning the way you one day will, though no one in that moment thinks of prophecy, only of another mouth to feed. Your father is a Serbian Orthodox priest who believes more in books than in farming. Your mother is a woman who never learned to read, but invents household tools with an instinct for mechanics sharper than any formal education. Already, you are torn between two currents: faith and invention, ritual and improvisation, silence of scripture, and noise of machines. You are a child who sees the world not as others do. Where they see lamps, you see waves. Where they hear bells, you hear patterns. You remember flashes of light in your mind, visions that come uninvited, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes terrifying. You speak of them, and adults exchange glances, wondering if you are touched by divinity or by madness. You do not yet know the difference. You do not yet care. The Balkans are not forgiving. Villages burn, empires shift, neighbours eye each other with suspicion. Disease takes your brother Dane, the golden child, the one who was supposed to carry the family name with pride. You are left alive, but also left guilty, because your parents' eyes now weigh you heavier than before. Every step you take feels like compensation, every achievement like debt repayment to a grave. You vow silently to outshine death, to become more than ordinary, because ordinary in Smiljan means obscurity, and obscurity terrifies you more than famine. School is not enough. Teachers call you brilliant, but also unruly. You memorize entire books, solve problems others cannot, imagine machines no one asked for. You gamble with classmates, you calculate odds, you win, you lose, you learn obsession. You fall ill, nearly die, recover with a mind sharper than before. You walk fields and imagine waterfalls turned into power. rivers captured in wires. You are not satisfied with reading about machines. You dream of building them from air itself. Your father wants you to be a priest. You insist you will be an engineer. Fever nearly kills you again. And from your bed, you beg, promise, swear. Let me live, and I will devote myself to invention, not scripture. The fever breaks, and with it, your father's resistance. The path clears. You are not Nikola the priest's son anymore. You are Nikola, the inventor in waiting, though no one yet knows how much waiting the world will demand. You study in Graz, in Prague, in cities that feel enormous after Smiljan's fields. You devour mathematics, physics, electricity. You astonish professors, but you also skip exams, quarrel with classmates, gamble away stipends. You are already myth in miniature, brilliance wrapped in chaos, a man who can calculate complex equations in his head, but cannot calculate the price of bread. You watch demonstrations of direct current machines and scoff, whispering to yourself that alternating current is the true future. No one listens. Not yet. At night, you walk streets imagining towers that could beam power without wires, machines that could transmit voices across oceans, lights that could burn brighter than day. Your classmates laugh, your professors shake heads, but you are not discouraged. You know the world mocks visionaries until vision becomes profit. You know, though you cannot yet prove, that the sparks you see in your mind will one day leap into reality. And so your childhood ends not with closure, but with compulsion. You are Nikola Tesla, son of a priest, son of an inventor, haunted by visions, driven by obsessions, carrying both brilliance and ruin in your veins. You will leave the Balkans, you will chase storms across continents, you will light cities and frighten investors. You will end your days whispering to pigeons in New York hotels. But for now, you are only a boy staring at lightning and whispering that you too can command the sky. You arrive in America not as a conquering genius stepping into destiny, but as a half-broke immigrant clutching a ticket and a letter of introduction that you pray will be enough to buy you entry into the laboratories you have dreamed of. The ship ride across the Atlantic smells of salt, sweat, and steerage food that never sits right in your stomach, and you spend nights staring at the black water, imagining that if you fell overboard, no one would even bother to write your name in the log. You repeat to yourself that this is worth it, that the world is waiting for your alternating current, that Edison himself will recognize your brilliance. You forget, conveniently, that Edison is a businessman first and a scientist second, and businessmen rarely reward brilliance unless it can be counted in dollars. New York in 1884 is not a city, it is a furnace. Smoke clings to every brick, cables dangle like veins, horses stumble through crowded streets while carriages rattle and vendors shout in tongues you barely understand. Immigrants swarm docks, each one with the same desperation in their eyes, each one hoping the city will choose them to rise instead of crush them. You stand among them, your accent thick, your suit threadbare, your shoes muddy, and you tell yourself you are different, you are destined. Destiny, however, does not pay for dinner. The letter of introduction gets you through Edison's doors. Inside, the famous laboratory hums with energy. Dynamos, batteries, lamps flickering, assistants rushing, sparks snapping from crude experiments. Edison himself is not the romantic figure of textbooks, but a pragmatic man with a voice like gravel, always calculating, always measuring. He listens to you, this tall Serbian with eyes too bright, and he hears your words about alternating current. He nods, but his nod is the kind given to a child presenting drawings on scrap paper. Edison is wedded to direct current. He has patents, investors, infrastructure already laid in copper and sweat. He does not want vision. He wants profit. You take work anyway, because you must eat. They hand you tasks no one else wants, systems failing, generators broken, nights spent knee-deep in grease and noise. You solve them one by one, with calculations scrawled on napkins, with sleepless nights, with ideas so strange, Assistants mutter that you must be mad. You save Edison money, time, face. He praises you in private, dismisses you in public. One day, he promises you a reward. $50,000 if you can redesign his inefficient motors. You do it. You bring him blueprints, working models, numbers sharper than knives. He laughs, says, "You don't understand American humor." You understand very well. He tricked you. You quit. It is the first of many betrayals. Now you are alone again, in a city that chews through men like tobacco. You dig ditches for cables, the irony not lost on you. The man who dreams of towers transmitting energy without wires is burying wires in mud for a day's wage. You sweat, you curse, you nearly break. At night, you scribble equations in cheap notebooks, sparks in your mind louder than the blisters on your hands. You refuse to die as ditch digger Nikola. You cling to alternating current, whispering to yourself that the world will bend eventually, even if Edison calls you mad. And then fortune tilts. Investors, men with money and curiosity, notice your strange machines. You demonstrate motors powered by alternating current, sleek, efficient, elegant. You stand on stage, sparks leaping, lamps glowing, and for once the crowd does not laugh. They applaud. You catch the attention of George Westinghouse, a man less mythic than Edison, but more pragmatic. He sees profit in your vision. He offers backing, patents, laboratories. You accept, not because you trust him, but because alternating current finally has a patron. Thus begins the War of Currents. Edison, furious at your betrayal, launches a campaign of slander. He insists alternating current is dangerous, deadly, unsuitable for homes. He orders public demonstrations where dogs, horses, even an elephant are electrocuted with AC to show its horrors. Newspapers lap it up. Crowds gasp. You seethe. Edison sells fear, you sell vision. The battle is not fought with swords, but with sparks, not in fields, but in newspapers and laboratories. You believe science will win. Edison knows business often does. But cracks appear. Westinghouse argues over money, patents, credit. You are paid, yes, but less than your ideas deserve. You spend funds recklessly, experiments spiraling. You are brilliant, but brilliance eats stability. You wander New York streets at night, muttering formulas, frightening strangers with your intensity. Pamphlets begin to call you eccentric. Investors shift uneasily, and yet alternating current spreads. Street lamps glow, motors hum, wires carry power miles farther than direct current ever could. Factories convert, cities follow, contracts sign. The Niagara Falls project looms, promising to harness a natural wonder into electricity for thousands. Your dream takes shape, though not always under your name. Edison sulks, curses, adapts. You pace, mutter, envision greater things still. Towers, wireless power, energy leaping through air like thunder. But even in success, you are restless. You are never satisfied with motors that merely work. You want miracles. You want to bottle lightning, to command it, to give it to humanity for free. You want too much. And the city whispers that men who want too much usually end in madness. For now, though, you are in America, no longer ditch digger, no longer Edison's assistant. You are Tesla, eccentric, tall, foreign, brilliant, frightening. A man who carries storms in his head and insists the world will one day glow with his visions. You are half right. You are not content with simply winning the war of currents, because winning in the ordinary sense has never satisfied you, not when the visions in your mind are so much larger than contracts and patents, not when you believe that electricity is not merely a utility to light lamps, but the very blood of the universe waiting to be commanded. You have alternating current humming through American cities now, turbines spinning, lamps glowing, but instead of resting on triumph, you crave the impossible, the miraculous, the kind of experiment that will blur the line between science and sorcery. And so you leave the crowded, skeptical streets of New York and climb into the thin, electric air of Colorado Springs, a place chosen not because it is comfortable, but because its altitude and isolation promise less interference, more sky, more storm, more canvas for the lightning you are about to summon. The laboratory there is not modest, but monstrous. A barn-like structure with a roof that groans under the weight of copper, coils rising like mechanical trees, wires snaking across floors, the smell of ozone clinging to every surface. Locals watch with suspicion, whispering that the tall foreigner with piercing eyes is building a machine to summon the devil, or perhaps to talk to Mars. And though they mock, they also shudder when night falls and strange blue glows seep from your windows, when sparks crackle louder than thunder, when their telephones buzz with voices that are not there. You assure them it is science, but science in your hands looks like magic even to scientists, and Colorado is not ready for a man who treats the sky as his blackboard. You build coils taller than houses, copper spirals that seem less designed than conjured, and when you throw the switch, the earth itself trembles. Sparks leap meters long, arcs crack open the night. Bolts of artificial lightning slam into the ground until the air smells scorched and animals miles away bolt in terror. You pace among them calmly, as if immune, your body glowing faintly from the charge, your hands lifting as if you were conducting a symphony of thunder. Witnesses swear you summon lightning with your eyes alone. You correct them, explaining about frequencies, resonances, transmission, but they nod politely, because no explanation matters when you look like a prophet dressed in a laboratory coat. You burn out Colorado Springs more than once. Generators explode, transformers melt, the local power company begs you to stop because you overload their lines until entire towns flicker. You smile, promise restraint, then chase visions again the next night. You are searching for wireless transmission, not just across wires, not just through copper, but through the very air, the very earth. You believe you can send power across continents, voices across oceans, without cables. You are right in principle, wrong in timing. The world is not ready, investors are not patient, and your experiments look too much like sorcery to bankers who prefer profit charts to thunder. Back in New York, you convinced J.P. Morgan to fund your greatest project yet, a tower on Long Island, Wardenclyffe, meant to beam power and communication across the globe. You sell it as the future of telegraphy, but in your mind, it is more. Free energy, lightning bottled and distributed, humanity unchained from coal and copper. The tower rises, a skeletal giant of wood and iron, its dome swelling like a metal mushroom. Workers hammer, engineers calculate, and you walk among them like a general directing a war against limitation itself. Newspapers publish sketches, crowds gossip, rivals sneer. Edison mutters again, this time with less laughter, because even he fears what a Tesla tower might mean if it succeeds. But the tower is never finished as you dreamed it. Money runs thin. Morgan grows impatient, demanding profit where you promise miracles. Where are the returns? He asks. Where are the dollars? You answer with words like planetary resonance and limitless energy, but financiers do not feed on resonance. They feed on dividends. Morgan withdraws, the tower stands half complete, a monument to vision abandoned mid-gesture. Neighbors stare at it like a haunted relic. Newspapers mock it as folly, and you refuse to admit defeat, though the rust on its beams argues otherwise. And yet, even incomplete, the legend grows. Children whisper that Tesla has a tower to talk to Mars. Pamphlets claim you are building death rays. Crowds insist you can split the earth, shatter cities, summon storms. You deny some, hint at others, encourage the myths when they protect you from ridicule, retreat into silence when they grow too absurd. You become half man, half myth, a figure walking between laboratories and dreams. Your coils crackle, your towers loom. Your name hums in the air like static, and whether you succeed or fail matters less than the fact that you dare to make lightning kneel indoors. You are Nikola Tesla in Colorado and in Wardenclyffe, the man who treats storms as experiments, who stands in arcs of fire without flinching, who insists that the future will be wireless, free, and endless. You frighten investors, you dazzle audiences, you exhaust yourself chasing visions that may never pay a dividend but will echo through centuries. You are a man playing Prometheus in a century that prefers accountants, and though they will punish you for it, you will never stop. You are Nikola Tesla, but you are also not Nikola Tesla, because somewhere between the sparks in Colorado and the unfinished tower on Long Island, the man turned into a story, and stories do not obey physics, they obey hunger. The world needs prophets, magicians, martyrs, scapegoats, and you become all four at once. You wanted alternating current to hum through wires, towers to beam energy across oceans. But what you receive instead is pamphlets and newspapers that twist your name into incantation. Tesla, the wizard, Tesla, the lunatic, Tesla, the man with machines that can destroy the world or save it, depending on which column sells more copies that week. The first myth that sticks is the death ray. You speak once of a weapon, a device capable of projecting concentrated energy across distances, a teleforce that could bring down armies, destroy planes, end wars by making aggression suicidal. You imagine it as deterrent, a shield, something to make humanity safe by making violence impossible. But nuance never sells. Newspapers print, Tesla invents death ray. Sketches appear of giant cannons blasting lightning bolts across cities, of you standing beneath arcs of fire like some Balkan Zeus. Investors laugh, governments raise eyebrows, journalists swarm. You do not deny it fully, because denial never interests anyone. You let the myth breathe, perhaps even enjoy it, because if they will not fund your tower for free energy, perhaps they will fund your tower for apocalypse. They do not. The weapon remains rumor, your notes vague, your explanations slippery. Yet for decades afterward, schoolchildren whisper that Tesla could kill with a beam of light. The second myth is free energy, and this one you encourage more openly. You believe sincerely that the earth itself hums with power, that resonance can transmit electricity without wires, that towers like Wardenclyffe could give every village light without bills, every home warmth without coal, every person access without price. You are not wrong in principle. Modern physics nods politely at parts of your vision. But you are too early, too broke, too impatient. Investors do not pay for free. They pay for monopolies, meters, wires. You declare that you will give energy to humanity as freely as air, and financiers recoil. Yet the myth thrives, because people always hunger for the promise of something infinite and unowned. For a century after your death, your name will be plastered on YouTube videos and conspiracy pamphlets. Tesla, the saint of suppressed invention. Tesla, the martyr whose machines were stolen by governments and buried to keep humanity enslaved. The truth is sadder and simpler. Your investors walked away, your patents expired, your machines rusted. The only conspiracy was poverty. Then there are the strangenesses, the habits, the quirks that turn into caricature. You hate pearls, refuse to speak to women wearing them. You calculate every meal, measuring by volume, weighing by grams, convinced that precision in food grants precision in thought. You walk the same blocks every evening, counting steps, unable to tolerate deviation. You wash your hands compulsively, obsessed with cleanliness, avoiding touch. You adore pigeons, feed them daily, allow them into your room, once declaring that you loved one white pigeon as a man loves a woman. People laugh, call you eccentric, whisper about madness. But what is madness except genius stripped of profit? You were not more eccentric than other inventors. You were simply less rich, and poverty magnifies oddities into pathology. Edison was ruthless. Westinghouse was calculating. You were obsessive. History forgave the first two because they left fortunes. You left pigeons. The myths expand after you. Some claim you spoke with Martians, misinterpreting your reports of radio signals. Some insist you caused the Tunguska explosion in Siberia with an experiment gone wrong, as if your half-finished tower had casually leveled forests an ocean away. Others believe you discovered anti-gravity, time travel, secret vibrations that could split the planet. The FBI seizes your papers after your death, which only feeds the fire. Surely they contained blueprints for miracles. The truth is duller and therefore unacceptable. Your notes were chaotic, incomplete, half equations, half visions, many unreadable, even to you in the end. They were seized not because they hid time machines, but because governments seize everything when a scientist dies, hoping for scraps. Conspiracy is always more exciting than bureaucracy. You feed these myths sometimes, not because you believe them, but because they are the only currency left. When investors vanish, you speak of machines to end war. When newspapers ignore you, you hint at powers beyond imagination. You become the wizard they want, because being the wizard pays for dinner when being the engineer no longer does. And somewhere along the way, even you start to blur the line, half believing in visions you cannot build, half drowning in inventions that never pay. Would you survive as Nikola Tesla in this world of myths? Perhaps if you measured survival by attention. You never lacked that. But attention does not feed, attention does not warm, attention does not pay hotel bills. You become a man consumed by his own legend, a figure quoted more than credited, imagined more than understood. Your real achievements, alternating current, motors, coils, glow quietly while the world chases your imagined ones. Death rays, anti-gravity, free energy. You gave them storms, they preferred magic. And that is the cruelest myth of all, that you were not enough as you were, that Nikola Tesla, inventor, engineer, visionary, man who lit the world, was somehow less interesting than Nikola Tesla, wizard of lightning, prophet of Mars, builder of death. You dreamed of being remembered for science, but the world remembered you for rumor. You measure success not by patents, but by towers, by visions so large that entire skylines could bend to them. But investors measure success in dividends, and dividends do not sprout from half-finished domes of Wardenclyffe or notebooks scribbled with equations that sound more like prophecy than engineering. At first they nod politely, bankers with waxed moustaches and gold watches, listening to you speak of planetary resonance and energy broadcast through the very Earth itself. But their nods are not agreement. They are politeness wrapped around refusal, and after a while they stop nodding at all. J.P. Morgan turns his back. Westinghouse pleads poverty. Edison smirks in his grave with each year that you fail to cash in on your thunder. You return to New York with no tower, no workshop, no patron. What you have left are ideas, dazzling, endless, relentless. You pace hotel lobbies, whispering about wireless power, about a world where homes are lit without wires, where machines hum without fuel, where energy flows as freely as sunlight. Crowds gather to listen, but crowds do not invest. They applaud, they marvel, they whisper that you are genius, perhaps sorcerer, perhaps lunatic, and then they go home and pay their electric bills to Edison's descendants. Admiration is not currency, debt is. And debt loves you more than any patron ever did. Hotel bills pile, suppliers demand payment, lawsuits nip at your heels. You move from the Waldorf Astoria to smaller hotels, then smaller still. Each address a step down in comfort, each lobby a little less forgiving. You dine on bread and milk, measured carefully, because obsession still rules you. Precise calories, precise rituals, precise destruction. You owe, you owe, you owe, and each time you sign a receipt, you tell yourself a new invention will pay it all back, though none ever does. And yet you cannot stop inventing. In your mind, the sparks still fly. You sketch devices to transmit images, voices, even thoughts. You imagine planes powered by wireless energy, ships sailing the seas without coal, machines controlled remotely by signals invisible to the eye. Some of these ideas are sound, decades ahead of their time. Others are fever dreams scribbled in haste. You do not distinguish. To you all visions demand pursuit. To investors, they all look the same. Unprofitable. Public lectures sustain you for a while. You stand in theatres, tall, gaunt, eyes burning, your accent rolling, your hands conjuring diagrams in air. Audiences gasp when you stand among arcs of lightning, when lamps glow wirelessly, when motors hum in silence. For a moment you are prophet again, Prometheus with fire caged in coils. But applause fades quickly once the curtain falls, and applause cannot be traded for meals. You retreat backstage to count coins and wonder how many nights they will cover. The city around you changes. Skyscrapers rise, powered by currents you made possible, but your name is absent from the contracts. Radios hum, neon signs blaze, cars roar down avenues, and each owes something to you, but no royalty checks arrive. Edison dies rich and revered, Westinghouse comfortable, Morgan's heirs entrenched. You are left walking past towers you fathered but cannot afford to enter. Investors stop returning calls, old allies stop answering letters, secretaries shake their heads when you appear, insisting Mr. So-and-so is not available. You are not Nikola Tesla the inventor anymore, you are Tesla the relic, Tesla the eccentric, Tesla the guest people tolerate at dinners for the amusement of his strange stories, not for his ideas. You speak of death rays and free energy because at least people listen, because reality has abandoned you, but legend still pays for a seat at the table. Poverty is not sudden, it is a drip. First you sell equipment, then furniture, then patents. You pawn the last jewelry you own. You walk instead of taking cabs. You sleep in colder rooms each winter, but poverty becomes routine, and you adapt as you adapted to everything else, through obsession. You live like a monk in hotels that do not love you, feeding pigeons outside, whispering to yourself about inventions no one funds, still convinced tomorrow will bring recognition, still believing the world will finally understand. Would you survive this? To have seen the future, to have built it, to have touched lightning with your hands, and then to walk streets hungry, dismissed, pitied? Perhaps not, but Tesla does, because Tesla is not simply a man, Tesla is momentum, carried forward not by money, but by compulsion. You fall, you fall, you fall, but you never stop moving, never stop drawing, never stop promising that tomorrow you will change the world again. And maybe you are right, but tomorrow never arrives in time to pay the bill. You do not die in a blaze of sparks, surrounded by coils, lightning crawling across your hands, newspapers cheering the triumph of genius. You die in a hotel room. But that is still years away, and those years are the longest, strangest, loneliest chapters of your life. The decades where you become less a scientist and more a ghost, haunting lobbies and rooftops, drifting between reality and legend until no one is quite sure which version of you exists. The hotels are both palace and prison. You begin at the Waldorf Astoria, grand halls, velvet carpets, bellboys nodding politely, though always too politely, as if they are in on the joke that your bills are late. You walk the lobby like a monarch disguised as pauper, tall, gaunt, with eyes that burn too bright, your suit fraying at the cuffs, but your manners sharp as ever. You insist on precision in everything. Meals of bread and milk, calculated by volume, eaten at exact times, napkins folded into careful geometry, your presence as ritualistic as it was when you performed with lightning. The staff whisper. Some pity, some mock, but all recognize that the strange foreigner with pigeons in his pockets is not to be touched. Debts grow. You cannot pay, so you move. From Waldorf to St. Regis, from St. Regis to the Governor Clinton, each step downward, another layer stripped. By the 1930s, you live at the New Yorker, a skyscraper humming with electricity you helped make possible. yet you occupy a small spare room, curtains drawn, your bills covered occasionally by sympathetic friends or wealthy admirers who want the honor of saying they supported Nikola Tesla, even if only with a check to cover another month of bread and pigeons. The pigeons are your true companions now. Every day you walk to Bryant Park or nearby squares, scattering seeds, whistling softly, dozens of birds whirling down to cover your shoulders, your arms, your hat. Children laugh, mothers frown, businessmen step around you, but you do not care. You watch the birds with tenderness sharper than any you offered to people. You study them, you talk to them, you insist each one is unique, that one particular white pigeon is your soulmate, that when she visits your window, a light shines in your heart brighter than any lamp you ever built. The newspapers seize on this, printing stories of Tesla, the mad pigeon lover, turning your solitude into farce. They miss the truth, that in your pigeons you find constancy, affection without betrayal, loyalty without contract. They do not invest, but they do not abandon. You continue to write, to sketch, to mutter about inventions. You tell anyone who will listen that you still hold secrets. A beam weapon to end war, machines to communicate across planets, engines to draw power from cosmic rays. Some lean in, fascinated. Others smirk, dismiss you as a relic of a past age. The FBI notes your words, collects your papers, but they find less than they hoped, because even your notes are like you. Half vision, half riddle, brilliant but impractical, dazzling but unpaid. Visitors come occasionally, journalists, admirers, young engineers. They leave with stories, each different. One says you are a prophet, another says you are insane. Both are correct. You pace the room, declaiming about the future, your voice carrying the conviction of a man who sees farther than others, though your shoes are worn thin, though your bed is unmade, though your dinner is a saucer of milk shared with a pigeon. They write their articles, they shake their heads, they return to a city blazing with neon powered by currents you made possible, and they forget to pay your bill. Illness creeps in quietly. You are old now, past 70, past 80, your body frail though your mind still burns. You collapse once in the street, struck by a car, bones broken, recovery slow. You dismiss it, insist you are fine, but the cracks widen. Still you rise, still you walk to feed pigeons, still you write letters to Roosevelt, to the League of Nations, proposing weapons, inventions, visions that never reach beyond the page. You do not stop, because stopping would mean admitting you are finished. And Nikola Tesla is never finished, not even when the world has already filed you under eccentric footnote. Your room becomes your laboratory, though it contains no coils, no towers, no thunder. Only papers stacked, envelopes unopened, notes scribbled, diagrams of machines that might have been, or might never be. You insist the work continues, but the work is only in your head now. Investors do not come. Crowds do not applaud. Only pigeons tap at your window. Would you survive it? To have lit the world and then sit in darkness, to have dreamed of towers feeding humanity and then share crumbs with birds? Perhaps not, but Tesla does, because Tesla is stubborn beyond reason, convinced until the last breath that genius will outlast poverty, that vision will outlast ridicule, that memory will outlast flesh. And so your last years are not triumph, not tragedy, but absurdity. A man who once commanded lightning, now negotiating with hotel managers. A prophet of energy, now whispering love to pigeons. A visionary reduced to myth while still alive. You die not in applause, but in silence. In 1943, alone in your room at the New Yorker, found days later, body frail, pockets nearly empty, mind still too full. The city outside hums with alternating current. Lights blaze, radios sing, neon pulses. You gave them all this. They do not look up. They do not thank you. But they are living in your dream, even if they never remember your name. You die alone in January 1943 in a hotel room whose rent you could not afford. Your body discovered only after the maid grows suspicious of silence too thick for even a recluse. Your pockets are nearly empty, your shoes worn thin, your notebook scattered, your pigeons still circling windowsills as if waiting for crumbs that will never come. For a moment, you are just another old man found dead in New York, one more immigrant swallowed by the city's hunger. But you are also Nikola Tesla, and death is the beginning of your second life. The life of myth. The FBI arrives before your family does. Agents rifle through trunks, boxes, drawers, confiscating notebooks, sketches, equations scrawled in margins. To them, you're not a forgotten eccentric, but a potential treasure chest of weapons, machines, secrets too dangerous to leave unguarded. They do not find a death ray. They do not find a machine to talk to Mars. They do not find free energy bottled neatly in schematics. What they find is chaos, formulas incomplete, notes half legible, visions tangled with metaphors, fragments that reveal genius but not miracles. Bureaucrats are disappointed, conspiracy theorists delighted. The absence of proof becomes proof of conspiracy, and suddenly Tesla is not only inventor but martyr, his greatest discoveries hidden from humanity by governments afraid of their power. Your funeral is small, but your afterlife is enormous. In the decades that follow, your name grows louder, not quieter. At first, it is engineers and scientists who keep your flame, reminding the world that alternating current was your gift, that radios, motors, turbines, wireless signals all carry your fingerprints. Then artists adopt you, painting you as wizard, as tragic hero, as Prometheus punished not by gods, but by accountants. Then conspiracy theorists arrive, crowning you patron saint of suppressed truth, insisting you built machines that could cure disease, end poverty, destroy armies, only to be silenced. Finally, popular culture swallows you whole, turning you into a brand, your name slapped on cars, bands, comic books, video games. You become a paradox. Alive, you begged for investors, died broke, ignored. Dead, you are limitless, celebrated, worshipped. Alive, they mocked your pigeons. Dead, they sculpt statues. Alive, you slept hungry. Dead, you feed generations of dreamers. The man who could not pay hotel bills becomes the man whose name powers automobiles on roads he never imagined. But myths are not mercy. Myths distort as much as they honor. People remember you as wizard, not engineer. They prefer your lightning shows to your careful calculations. They whisper about death rays, anti-gravity, time machines, aliens. They claim you caused the Tunguska explosion in Siberia. They claim you invented smartphones a century early. They claim your towers were destroyed by oil barons terrified of free energy. They build shrines on the bones of exaggeration, worshipping not your reality, but their need for wonder. The truth is sharper, sadder, and no less extraordinary. You did not invent death rays, but you imagined directed energy weapons long before science caught up. You did not create free energy, but you dreamed of transmission technologies that inspired wireless networks. You did not talk to Mars, but you were among the first to detect signals from space, mistaken though they were. You did not split the Earth, but your oscillators could shake bridges. You did not end poverty, but you showed that power could travel miles, bringing light to cities, factories, homes. You were not magician, you were engineer. And somehow that was never enough for people. Would you survive as Nikola Tesla in memory? Perhaps. You are remembered more than Edison in some circles, revered as symbol of genius unappreciated, of dreamer crushed by capitalism, of visionary punished for giving too much. But memory is not history. Memory bends you until your outline no longer matches your shadow. Schoolchildren repeat myths before facts. Engineers sigh at exaggerations. Conspiracists hoard your name like relic. And yet, maybe this is what you wanted. Not wealth, not power, but remembrance. To live forever in minds, even if distorted, even if dressed in robes you never wore. Prometheus did not complain that myths lied about details. He only burned so fire could reach mortals. You too burned, your life consumed by visions that never fit wallets, your body consumed by solitude, but your spark leapt into centuries. Now your name is everywhere, in statues across Belgrade, in museums in New York, in company logos driving sleek cars across highways, in internet forums whispering of secrets governments hide. You are Nikola Tesla, born in a Balkan village, dead in a hotel room, resurrected as myth larger than towers you never finished. Your inventions power the world, your myths power imagination. And between the two lies the truth. That genius is not lightning, but persistence, not sorcery, but work, not prophecy, but obsession. That is your epilogue, not silence in a hotel room, but thunder rolling endlessly, echoing your name louder with each retelling.